I have a lot of trouble talking about myself and sort of my own successes, but I had a bunch of people say, if you want to talk to people about your success, you have to tell them why you're successful or why they should consider you successful. And so if you'll excuse my immodesty for a moment or two, I'm 30 years old. I've been doing digital interactive really my whole life, if I look back at it honestly. I've been tinkering with it since I was about 5 years old, started with HyperCard. And because that was always my passion, when I actually started doing it in the real world professionally, I was able to wring a lot of success out quite quickly. I built some things that I found interesting. I promoted them to the world, and I suddenly found myself winning a bunch of awards, things like Best Canadian Developer, which I have yet to live up to, I'm sure. I was somehow named a significant inventor by the Alberta Heritage Community Foundation or something like that. I'm not joking when I say that, this is not what I don't live for awards, and awards have been a tool in my career, but it's really not what I aim for. I've been very lucky to work with some really amazing companies. My company does projects for companies like Adobe, Microsoft, AOL, a lot of these big names, and we've done it all from Edmonton, and we've done it without any sort of traditional entrepreneurial activities. I've never written a business plan. I've never done any type of active marketing. I've never taken venture capital. And so again, what I want to talk about here is sort of my own path and how it's kind of different from a lot of other people's. So again, I've been doing this a long time, all the way from just being a hobbyist, playing with this stuff for the fun of it, up to I've lately had a lot of people call me a geek rock star, which I find a complete contradiction in terms. But I have had people ask me for my autograph, which is absolutely bizarre to me. So, I think the most important part of figuring out whether you're being successful is defining success. And early on, I defined my success in a very traditional way. How many awards was I winning? How much money was I making? How much recognition was I gaining? Those types of things. And I realized a few years ago that I really had to establish my own criteria for success because I wasn't quite as happy as I expected to be when I was meeting this sort of cultural yardstick for success. So for me, this is how I define success. A lot of what makes me happy in my job is challenge, right? Solving new problems, doing new things. I'm happiest when I'm solving a problem and then I'm contributing that. I mean, we've heard a lot about sharing and open communities, and for me, I define a lot of my personal satisfaction, personal success around the contribution that I'm making. For the most part, that's been limited to my own small community, which is mostly the Flash community. Another thing that really keeps me engaged and keeps me passionate about what I'm doing is diversity and novelty. So this is the type of work that we're doing, the places that we're deploying it. I've had my work show up in art galleries. I've had my work show up on billboards in Times Square. I've had it on mobile phones. I've had it on desktops. I've had it on the web. I've had it on mobile ad vans, like trucks with big screens on it running around. And every time that it shows up somewhere new, to me, that's something really exciting. And not because it's something that I can point to and go, look, I did that, but just because it's sort of new ground for me. It's a new challenge. It's something very exciting. The last thing that's very important to me is just the people that I'm interacting with. I mean, Shauna talked a bit about this morning, but I've worked really hard to make sure that the people that I deal with, both clients and the team that I've surrounded myself with, are people that I really like to work with and that share sort of a common vision of doing really cutting edge work that pushes the bounds of what I've seen before. And to me, that's much more important than financial success or, sort of larger recognition. In some ways, putting this talk together was sort of a soul-searching experience for me. Taking a look at sort of what's made me happy over the, in the past and what's currently making me passionate and happy, I realized that, there's this big difference again between traditional success and my satisfaction, or how I'm measuring success. And so early on, I've been playing with interactive just as a hobby, for years. And when I got my first job and I started making money for the first time doing what I loved, I realized that my satisfaction was kind of declining because I was getting handed these sort of boring jobs to do, and I didn't have time left over to sort of explore things and meet new challenges. And so then it came to a point where actually the company I was working with went under twice at Christmas. And and I took advantage of that situation. I went out and I started my own company, just doing solo work. And so there's this big rush of happiness where, I was doing my own thing, I could set my own direction, I could take on challenges as I saw them. And for a while that was great, but my business basically flopped for the first 2 years. I didn't make any money. I, got to the point where I was lying in bed every night just freaking out about how I was going to pay off my credit cards and put food on my table. And so obviously when your base needs aren't being met, your satisfaction kind of drops, no matter how much cool stuff of your own you get to work on, right? So after a while, taking advantage of the fact that no one was paying me to do anything and building a lot of stuff in all the free time I was left with, I built some things that really sort of hit a note at the time, and people took notice, and I started, again, winning these awards and getting asked to speak at these events and starting to get access to really cool work that I found was really innovative and that really made me happy to work on. And so both my sort of traditional success as my business grew and my personal satisfaction grew together, right? And I was very happy about the work I was doing, and I was making scads of money, I wish. But as my business has become more established, and things have sort of become more routine, my company is awesome. I work with amazing people who do great work, and it's gotten to the point where I don't need to be involved in everything anymore. It kind of runs itself in a lot of ways, and I find myself spending more time sort of managing the business and things like that. And I realized that while my sort of traditional success is continuing to grow, my personal satisfaction has really started to drop. And putting this talk together for me really made me step back and look at that and start thinking about what I'm going to do to change it. And I don't have an answer for that yet. And I don't even know why I shared that with you guys, but hey, this is like a group therapy session. So having sort of come up with my benchmark for my own personal success, I wanted to talk about my own path to finding success. Again, I think it's kind of unconventional, and I think, again, some of the things that sort of set it apart is that, I've never done active marketing. I've never done schmoozing. I don't chase after CEOs and try and get business cards. I don't even have business cards. I rarely have them. I don't like to be part of that scene. So what I've done instead is what I call sort of marketing in the trenches. And there's a few parts of this. The first for me, and probably the biggest part of my career overall, is play. If you look at nature, I come from a family of biologists, and they say that, play in nature is to develop skills and establish hierarchy. And I think that play does the same thing in the real world, in the professional world. When I was down, when I didn't have any real work, when I was basically starving, I spent my time building things that I loved, things that I was really passionate about, and things that I thought would be cool. And that play developed skills that I would never have been able to develop doing commercial work, because commercial work sort of puts you into a box a lot of the time, and you don't get a chance to explore things that don't fit inside of that box. It also allowed me to sort of showcase what I was doing and sort of establish myself in the hierarchy of my profession, right? People could sort of judge my capability based on the play and the experimentation that I was doing. And I've talked about this a lot at Flash conferences and technical conferences, And I usually refer to it as passionate procrastination. So, when you kind of wind up not wanting to work on what you're supposed to work on, or you just don't have the work to work on, taking the time and spending on something that you're really passionate on and building something that's exciting to you and using that to leverage your career further, right? To show other people what you're capable of doing. As part of this, you need to be easily inspired. I think there's very few genuine eureka moments where you just suddenly come up with a brand new idea out of the blue. I think that you need to really be open to being inspired, and this has to be both within your own profession, so looking at what other people are doing, and also just in the world around you. I think I'm a very almost special class. I'm kind of short bus in the fact that I'm very easily awed by things. I fly, a couple dozen times a year, and every time I get on a plane, I'm like, holy crap, you guys see this? We're flying, this is amazing. And, I think that, that being open to being awed by things and being inspired by them really lets you do much more interesting work. And it really comes into this integration of skills where, which again has been touched on quite a bit, but being open to people from other professions and bringing these ideas together and creating new things through mashups or through collaboration, as opposed to searching for this brand new innovative idea that's going to, strike you out of the blue sky. For me, a big part of what makes me happy is exploring limits. Innovation happens on the edges, right? It happens when we can break through limits. And so really exploring the edges of your technology or your profession or your culture, that's where you're going to find the really cool ideas and honestly where it's the most fun to play. This has been the theme of the day. I don't think a talk has gone by that hasn't talked about this, but this for me is, I think, what has led to my more traditional success. I share a ton of what I do. Anything I learn, I blog about, I tweet, I release a lot of source code, I build a lot of tools, and I release those tools for people. If you're in a creative industry, I think one of the coolest things you can do and one of the best things you can do to understand your own industry and your own limitations is building your own tools, right? If you're a carpenter, build your own awls. If you're a geneticist, hell, build your own gene sequencer. We actually saw examples of that this morning, which to me is crazy, but I build a lot of my own tools and then I release them to my industry, and that helps to establish me as an expert at the same time as it makes my own job easier. Participate. This is similar concept, but the more you talk to people, the more you learn, the more opportunity you have for collaboration. Twitter, I was a huge Twitter skeptic, but I've really kind of warmed up to it. It's just amazing how you can broadcast this stuff out to all these people who are listening to you, and they can come back and give you all kinds of new ideas. I use it for, obviously my profession, asking questions, broadcasting knowledge, but I also use it for stupid things like travel. Hey, does anyone know a good place to eat in Madrid? And you get back 40 answers, and that's really cool to me, right? It's like instant crowdsourcing. It's the promise of Web 2.0 all in one moment. It's amazing. Connect. So as I said, I've never really schmoozed. I've never really networked in the common sense of that word, but I've always been very open to being friends with people. And actually probably one of my biggest successes from a business perspective, and one of the things that allowed me to gain access to really cool, innovative work with these larger companies was all brought on through a Halo game. I was at a conference. There was this Microsoft-sponsored Xbox room, and these guys invited me in to come play Halo. I had never played before, but I was like, hey, I'll be social, I'll go in and play. I played a bit of Halo, became really good friends with these guys, and through them, both directly and indirectly, I've had just an amazing explosion of really cool work come through. And that's a lot of my work comes through from people that I consider really good friends now. I try and avoid politics. I try and be very empathetic in conflict situations. I think one of the secrets of my longevity in my industry has been, I mean, I'm 30, so I don't know what, in my industry is about 10 years old, but damn it, I've been here through it all, has been the fact that I try and be the reasonable voice in things. You know, when people start screaming about HTML5 versus Flash, I try and find the middle ground. I try and understand both sides before I get out my pitchfork and light my torch. I think there's a lot of glory to be found being the guy in the front with the pitchfork and the torch, but I don't think there's a lot of longevity in that role. I think there's a lot of longevity being a reasonable voice in these situations. One of the things I love about what I do is that it's all about engagement. I build interactive tools, I build interactive experiences, and so by definition, the things that I build are designed to engage people. And I love, telling stories. I love that what I do goes beyond telling stories and it opens dialogues, that people talk back, right? That they can actually work with the things that I do and they can take advantage of social features and stuff like that. And so this applies both to the things that you do. So, any type of design, I think, can be used to open dialogue. And so I think this is really important. Forgetting ego is huge, and it's something to this day that I kind of struggle with. It's, if you're too wrapped up in your own issues, it's hard to share. It's when you reach a certain point, this is definitely something that I struggle with right now, is that I've sort of reached this pinnacle of my own very small industry, and once you're there, it's terrifying to move. It's really hard to take challenges and continue to share what you're doing with people because you're always worried you're going to be judged against what everyone else conceives you to be, and you personally don't feel like you're, this geek rock star, in my case, of the spectrum, where if you're just getting started, it's really hard to share because you're worried about people calling you out and saying that's no good. And if you can leave your ego at the door, you're open to collaboration because you can work with people who are better than you, because there's always going to be a lot of people that are better at things than you. I think most importantly, and perhaps most obviously, is never forget to create. Always create new things. Beyond that, though, I think even more importantly is engaging other people to create new things. I mean, there's only so much you can do as an individual, but if you actually excite other people and kind of sweep them up into your trail or as partners, you can basically multiply your own effect. And I mean, Seth Godin, who you saw talk in that last video, has a book called Tribes, where he talks about how everyone is looking for a leader and everyone is waiting to be led, and that basically all you have to do is take the reins and show people the way. And I think that's true. I think people like to be led, not necessarily because they're followers, but because they like to collaborate in something that's really interesting or cool to them. I get a lot of inspiration from nature. I mean, growing up with a couple of biologists, you kind of can't avoid developing a love for nature. And so I do a lot of these small experiments that explore sort of reproducing parts of nature, things like that. And this is a very minor ecosystem with genetic rules and how these things reproduce and pass on their traits. And we have predators that apply stress on the system, and food that sort of creates the rules of the energy rules. And for a while I got really into webcam interaction stuff. And so this is something I called Bubblegum Rain. And so this is using color detection through a webcam to drive this virtual drum set that's out in front of me. And this is where I get really confused about how to drum. Whoa! world. So please feel free to email me, Twitter me, whatever. And thank you very much.